Okay, hi Dana.
Hello.
I have Dana here, and we're going to just take some time to ask her some questions. So I'm Holly, you hear my voice in the background, from ARYA, which is Adult Recovery and Youth Alliance. And we are opening a sober living here in town for women and children. We really wanted to get some feedback of some women's experiences that they've had in sober living environments, like what that was like for them, what worked and what didn't, pieces like that. Just we want to be the best that we can be, so we want to be able to take that feedback and apply it to our programs. And it also gives a chance, I think, for the public to have more of an understanding of some of the inner workings of what people go through while living in sober living. So it's sort of an educational piece as well. So Dana, thank you for coming here and doing this. And I just wanted to start off by asking some questions, and obviously just answer whatever you feel comfortable answering. So, and you know, we want to make this has nothing to do with, you know, targeting some other sober living. You know, I'm just kind of having this disclaimer out there, okay?
Yeah,
we're not targeting other sober
course.
livings. We're literally just, we don't have to name anywhere, right? It's just taking your experience, and then, you know, I'm actually going to be taking notes while you're answering these questions too, because we want to learn and grow and do that based off of feedback. So I know this can be a vulnerable spot, and we're just going to kind of roll with where this goes. And I just want to thank you for being vulnerable and authentic and sharing this, you know, just some of the things you've gone through. So I know you were at a sober living, right? And you had kiddos at the time, but were they with you on site there or not at that time?
No. At the time, it was a time of recovery from COVID. I don't know what they were doing prior to me coming there, or during COVID or before COVID, but I do know that I could not have my children come to visit. They couldn't even stay outside and play, or, you know, to come in to use the bathroom. Yes. And thank you for having me.
You're home, yes. Yes. I just thought of that, you know, I was working at a treatment center actually during COVID, and that made me just think right there, kind of going back to what that was like. It's weird, I can remember, but now I'm talking to you directly on your personal experience with this. I can't imagine what that must have felt like for you. The whole COVID piece, right? What that did to all of us in different ways, right? And where these restrictions came in. But to all of a sudden have the restriction of where your kids couldn't even visit.
Yeah.
So, wow.
It was tough. When I got out, I went to Mahala's Hope, and when I got out of there, I went to Pillars in Appleton, a homeless shelter, and the courthouse wasn't open at the time. So that's where I was supposed to be having visits with my kids. So I was frantically looking. I called churches. And I actually had a church open up their doors for me, but CPS at the time did not accept the help that I found. And then when I transitioned into the sober living, there was no children allowed at the house at all.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was tough.
You know, I know this is a generalized question, but how do you feel that right there, that kind of restriction, never mind what you were going through, you know, during COVID, but how do you think that impacted your recovery process?
It was tough. I never stopped communication during active addiction, during recovery. When I was in recovery and at Mahala's Hope, I actually lost time with my kids just because of the distance that they were coming from. But I do feel that children are a huge part of recovery. And without my kids, I don't know if I would have made it through addiction or recovery without them.
Boy, gal, that's just so hard to picture. Is you just said that, you know, kiddos are such a huge part of your recovery. Of course they are, because recovery is about taking what's happening in life, right, and learning to integrate tools that we're learning, right,
Yeah.
to have a successful recovery, and then applying them to the areas of your life. Well, clearly your kiddos are a big part of your life, right? So
Exactly.
when that is not there, you know, I can't imagine how you have to then all of a sudden go out afterwards, right? After you're done with sober living, and then just all of a sudden try to do that, right? And now you don't have those other supportive pieces
Exactly.
you know, at your side right there,
Yeah.
right? So, boy, that's just a,
Yeah.
you know, that's something I hope people can understand, like that important piece of being able to have the kiddos on site while you're living there, and doing that is so incredibly important. Not only for you then to have the reality of what your life is going to look like and work through it with support, but also for the kiddos.
Yes.
Right? There's
Yes.
extra support for the kids, because we know that like substance use, you know, I say addiction, but there's just better words for that, but whatever. You know, it doesn't just affect the person struggling with the substance use disorder per se, right? I mean, this is why they call it's a family disease, right? I mean, it has a ripple effect. And so, you know, whether that's a spouse or other family member or your kids, you know, all of that comes down to that mental health piece too, in our behavior patterns, which is what we learn in recovery, right? But the kiddos then are really having those things, the healthy communication and the healthy lifestyles and the healthy habit changes modeled, right, around them. So they're
Exactly.
able to transition as well.
Yeah. So, so my kids, all the visits that I had with them were like all play. All of it was play. There was no momming involved. And I felt rushed to find housing so that I could get my kids out of foster care. I do believe that I could have stayed in the house. I only stayed for 6 months. I believe that I could have stayed longer to have more healing, more skills gained. But like you said, having the children along with you, you are not instantly a mother of two that you haven't had for almost 2.5 years. So that was a huge difficulty in my steps to my kids coming home. You're an instant mom of 2 kids that you have not mommed for a long time. It was all play. And then my kids had that adjustment too, where mommy was all play, but now mom has to do all these responsibilities of mom, has to clean the house, has to go to work, has to go, well, I was going to school at the time, has to go to school. And, you know, that was a hard reality for them to accept at the same time.
And then you were missing the support around you when that pushes against some things,
Exactly.
right?
They actually have asked me, they want to go back to the courthouse.
Oh.
Because of that connection that we had made at the courthouse visiting, and it was just me and the kids.
Dana, that is absolutely profound.
Mm-hmm.
I have never heard someone say that before, and that is so valid.
Yeah.
That's so valid. That is, wow, thank you for sharing that piece. That's so insightful. I mean, and I feel like anybody, you know, watching this video, I mean, I hope that piece right there, just again, the ripple effect, right? How this affects the kiddos. Of course they would.
Yeah.
Right? That was fun, Mom.
Yeah.
Right? We didn't have to say, I'm sorry, but it's bedtime, and set boundaries all the time, right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That is really profound.
Being able to do that in a space that's safe for the kids and the mothers, you know, that's amazing. And I wish there was something at that time when I was going through this.
Right.
To
and
be able to foster that.
When you say safe, I mean, just so people are aware watching this too, that might not understand kind of the inner workings of recovery and or sober living, kind of what goes on there. You know, you have peer support and staff support. You have a little bit more of that accountability and oversight in the programming. So there's these expectations, right, where you have this many meetings and this many house groups, and then you share and you open and you have therapy and you have all these pieces. So that creates this safe environment, because the reality is life, as we all know this, it can trigger things in us, right, emotionally.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing about active addiction is you're not dealing with that during active addiction. You're not used to being in your body with your feelings and actually sitting there and having to navigate those things. So when all of a sudden you're momming full time and having no real transition with that, you know, from the kiddos maybe not being able to be there, right, it's how triggering can that be, right? So now that's just a reality. And so now you don't have that safety net, right? So, I mean, that doesn't mean you didn't take other tools and you weren't plugged into support groups. And we're not saying that that just goes away. Of course, that's expected. But to have that in your living environment is a completely different piece.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Completely.
And what do you think, like, what do you think in that environment? Now, maybe so here's the question. What parts of that environment do you feel fostered your growth and helped you to anchor healthy living skills and habits that then, you know, led to what you believe is, you know, like a successful recovery and or to being a good parent? I ask that, and I understand that that's probably harder to say that in terms of the answer being with the kiddos, but what other tools, like what other things did they have in place that did help?
So this was a very relaxed environment. They did not have much programming. It was like one programming event a month, and that was more of like fellowship amongst the house or houses, because they did have more than one house, and to where like you're making jewelry or you're painting or you're bowling, fellowship amongst the other participants. There wasn't anything dealing with parenting. So that was a disconnect, because I think 5 out of the 7 girls in my house had children. So that was, to me, a disconnect on, you know, where do we go from here? You know, how do we grow in this section of our life? Skills that I did obtain from here would be the routine of cleaning and cooking, and we did have a weekly meeting with the house. There was like rooms that you had to go to AANA a certain amount of times. I don't honestly remember, sorry. But and I really enjoyed, and I've taken it with me to where, you know, trying to have a set up schedule of the cleaning, because in active addiction, and well, even now, I should be honest, I'm not the most cleanliness person, but like having that schedule on staying with, you know, cleaning and being able to have that fellowship once a week was very nice.
Okay. So, I mean, the next question was, what do you feel was missing for you personally? Obviously your kiddos, obviously parenting, you know, maybe some parenting programs, right, or educational pieces or application of things with parenting. Is there something else that you felt maybe was missing that you wished you would have had?
I believe, and some people may disagree with me because they feel that sober living should be less structured. I believe a more structured environment would have been more beneficial for reasons of being able to have like a clinician come in and talk to you, having those resources, having programming with you, your children, trauma-informed care, I think would have been great, because probably 99, you know, don't quote me on this, but 99.9% of people that are dealing with substance use disorders have trauma in their past. And it coincides, mental health, you know, there just wasn't, it was lacking in those sections.
Yeah, that's huge, because that's what's tricky, and I'm just pointing out, because I'm trying to also think of people that'll watch this video, right, from various understandings of recovery and addiction, and some that maybe don't know anything about it, right, or very little. And that's so hard, I'm sure, because you have different levels of treatment per se. You have primary care, you have a transitional, which there's very few of those. Mahala's was one of those, Mahala's Hope. And then you have sober living. And like, absolutely, can you see the benefit of still having the independence that sober living provides, right? That autonomy, because that's a huge piece of sober living in and of itself.
Yes.
Is to really hone in on those independent skills, but also having those things available more than maybe some tend to have. And and that is one thing, obviously, like at ARYA, us going forward, that this is something we have planned to do. We have a mental health practitioner on site. For those who need it, it's not mandatory, right? It's there. More programming groups available to pick from, and that would be depending on the work schedules of the women, because not everybody's going to work in the same work schedule. Right? And our big piece that I think is, I'm not even sure, I mean, there might be, like Meta House may do this, I'm not sure, but we're developing out this whole program with the kids and the moms, like you just mentioned. So that validates our direction, I guess is what I'm saying, because you sharing that is something that seemed obvious to us, right? Was, hey, how can we make the kids' time here not just like only playtime with moms, right? Which is great. You have to have that. That's something we don't always do in active addiction, right? Is play. I mean, truly. So that's a piece, but also have, while moms are in groups, we're having individuals come in and do groups with the kids that are developmentally appropriate, age appropriate, and volunteers, so that there can be little activities going on, but with another layer to that, and that's to be working on certain skill sets, right? But then also having groups where the moms can interact with the kids. Yes. So that does validate that direction, and I thank you for sharing that, because I'm trying to take this feedback in, right? This is you sharing this is multi-layered here. You're sharing a story. I'm hearing so many of your things for the first time, your pieces. I know about you. You and I have known each other a while. Some of it's more of a refresher, right? And some of it's obviously, like I said, coming into this whole video, we just want to take what you're saying and apply it, right? So that's super helpful to know. Again, that seems like an obvious direction, but I do realize the reality is not everybody can find people to do that. I think that's a big struggle in sober livings is, you have to have the volunteers, or you have to have the finances there to pay somebody to do this. So it's more like, planning and strategizing. But that said, do you feel, well, you couldn't, because you weren't able to have kids there because of COVID. I was gonna say, was it kid friendly? And that's very general.
I do have an answer for that, though. It could have been. There was a huge yard. There was a little tiny park across the street that had, a little swing set and a little teeter-totter and a sandbox. It could have been. There was potential there. It just wasn't allowed. And I kind of see from their point of view of maybe the risk that they may have felt, because when I was there was people that weren't following the rules. I get that, but there wasn't people on site. The house manager was a long-term resident who had worked their way up to house manager. And they didn't have a clinician, or there wasn't any responsible people. Not to say that they weren't responsible, but there was no accountability, I guess, if you want to say peer. Exactly. Right. Yeah. But it could have been. There was space. There was outside space. There was a public space across the street. Right. So it could have been.
Right. Yeah, that's sad that interacted with the COVID time period, that is what your time period was, because that was so tricky, but also, you can say that, but I don't want to minimize that. That's also unfortunate, right? Yeah. And that was your experience, you answered that. You said 5 out of the 7 women had kiddos. Yeah. So 5 out of the 7 women living there had kiddos, and none of those kiddos could be there at the time. No. And that had to be so hard.
I do know one of them had older children, not adult, but adult,
Yeah.
you know, like 16, 17 years old. They had come there like maybe once, but it was not, there was no like regular visitation or anything like that. Yeah.
Wow. And so this makes me think, I mean, because obviously then if you had 5 out of 7 women there, right, that had kiddos, did you guys share a lot? Was that a common struggle? What you just shared with me, your struggle with not being able to have the kiddos there, was that a common topic of conversation from the other moms? I mean, was that something you guys shared, you know, at least with each other, and you heard from other women too?
I would say most of our conversations would be about our mom guilt.
Oh, sure.
You know,
Sure.
And you know, one person would be feeling down that day, and another of us would comfort that person in that sense. But
Right.
I was always in desperation, I feel like. I at the time I had a public defender, you know, going with my case, and it just wasn't going right. And it was a struggle with my CPS worker, and I always felt like I was just always struggling with something and jumping through hoop. And so I talked a lot about that. A lot of the girls, we had different work schedules and stuff too, so it...
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I guess it probably, a positive from that, I think, probably at least had to be that you knew you were around other women that were going through the same thing. Should there need to be some sort of, you know, connection made with those struggles, like that is a benefit also to sober living, is having peers there that are going through the same things. As much as that could be a risk and a struggle, it's also a benefit, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that had to be tricky. What do you think the impact is on the community? Okay, so this is a thinker right here. This is a thinking question. For having the ability to have your kids, right? So like, say you're coming into sober living right now, and you were coming to ARYA, and you know you could have your kids on site. What do you think that social impact is like, or like how do you feel that benefits society as a whole? Sort of what is the ripple effect of that? I guess I'm trying to find the right words to that, but.
To me, that's not a thinker. That is, you are building resilient women and children that foster hope. And there's nothing that kills hope. And that will continue on through generation and generation and generation. That they will be stronger and stronger. And to me, that is so important, because a lot of women have generational trauma that, well, for one, they don't even know, you know, and they don't know that that's what's caused a lot of the things that they've, you know, went through, and by accident, or they have transferred that trauma onto their children. And by having a place like this fosters resilience and fosters that hope.
Yeah, it really does. And you're right. I mean, when you said generational trauma, I mean, that's essentially what it is. It's breaking the cycle of that, right? Yes. So then, as far as like community, you just think of, well, okay, so if new learned behaviors are there, new modeling comes in, now this becomes the children's norm, right? As they're growing in, then they in turn, the way that looks on their external is that way in society, and then the way they parent, right? So it truly does have that ripple effect. And then, you know, the healthier we are, right, mentally and physically and emotionally, the more we can really get into the service mindset, because otherwise there's so much survival, right? And so then we can really be giving back to our communities. So yes, it absolutely has that ripple effect. You're right. I like that you said that it builds resilience and fosters hope. It's so true. And just, we know what that can look like, what the impact of that is, right, on those around us. So what would be some things specifically that you would like to see ARYA provide for successful, sustained recovery that envelops the whole person, like the holistic approach? What are some pieces you would like to see there that you feel from your experiences would be really important for women coming in now?
So I'm going off of the things that I felt were really good in my journey.
Sure.
One of the main things that I really wish I would have stuck with in being out of sober living is healthy eating. So many of us don't know how to do it, and being able to feed ourselves, because I believe our diet is not just what we eat. So, but food is huge. And so healthy eating. Definitely, like we have spoke about the parenting
Yep.
with real life, hands-on type situations, to where a mother is not just becoming a mother when she comes home, to her outside of sober living.
Could that be, and I'm just curious, now that we're talking about this, could that be like almost having coaching alongside?
Oh yeah.
Because having somebody there where then a situation arises, right? Because if we're talking real life, real situations, right? Because one thing ARYA is looking at is like, hopefully getting some coaching in, right, from the ARYA college, as well as there's parents, I have to say this because it's a mouthful, parent support specialists and peer support specialists, right?
Yeah.
That can come in, and they have, that's sort of their niche is to just be in whatever's happening.
Yeah.
And navigate as it comes up.
Yes.
So sort of like a coaching role for real life.
Yes, because I know my oldest, when she came home, for good, she was so angry, and she had every right to be. I get it, but like I didn't know, even though I went through all my parenting classes that I needed to for CPS. I graduated that, and I had my little toolbox of everything that I needed to be able to deal with situations. There was just times that she was just so angry, and being able to have that support in moments like that, in the heat of it, and because being in recovery, you're learning yourself how to control and have emotional regulation and intelligence, and having someone walk you through the things that you're learning in real life situations is necessary.
It absolutely is. And I'm taking this in, I'm writing my notes, because this is so important. And these are things we've discussed and we're already working on implementing, but I'm definitely, just like life, we should always be open to taking in more. And I like basically with this last piece you said, I summed it up in these words: education and intellectual knowing is one thing, but application and experience is another.
Yes. And
And so really providing the space and the support necessary to have the application and the experience happen.
yes.
Okay.
And also,
Yeah.
because I'm partial to art therapy.
Oh yes, but that was huge for you.
Yeah, I really think having, just having art therapy sessions are so therapeutic to both the mother and child.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to speak unspoken words through art is just, it's so inspirational. I just cannot put it even into words how it is, how
That's
it
amazing.
feels. I think that should be one of your programs.
Well, I will say, so through this whole building up and the stage we're in now, you probably heard me mention, I know you kind of are paying attention to what's going on with ARYA, right?
Yeah.
But so Linda Fabry,
Yes.
who right, she's done a lot for us and did that amazing thing the other day, the paint gazing. So she is actually one of our solid people. She's coming in, and
Yes.
so she has a background in mental health, substance use, as well as expressive art therapy. So she's got kind of the whole package there, right?
Yes.
So she is going to be a regular person doing one of our programs and doing that through art. So that's actually was the first person that we had nailed down coming in and willing to do this, and like, she will be fantastic. I can't wait for the women to meet her. And she also has a very calming voice, which helps, right? It's just she's just amazing. So that'll be really, really cool. And she'll also be able to then mentor others as well that are coming alongside for these pieces, and they're wanting to learn, some other volunteers that have some of these other skill sets as well. But then it's like we want this program to not just, okay, it's this program, we want to meet this need. No, we want to take it and always make everybody walking through that door, whether it's a volunteer, a staff, a woman, a child, right? It doesn't matter. Give opportunities for growth and development as well.
Yeah.
So it's like she can have this mentoring role to help work with some other volunteers that actually have more of the skill set to work with the kiddos, right? So she can be teaching how to do that.
Right.
And so it's just such a beautiful thing. But
Yes.
I thought maybe you'd be like, yay, you have that. So I just had to tell you because that is a piece that we already have going. And that's really exciting. And it is important.
It's fostering vulnerability, and you have to be in that uncomfortable space to be able to heal. And so it's
a way to get things out that you sometimes don't realize.
Yes.
It's such an interesting tool.
I loved it.
And honestly, I never had any experience with that until I was able to kind of witness some things at Mahala's. And I was like, oh, wow, that's huge.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, sometimes there are parts of us that don't feel safe enough to express in our typical ways, right? And so it comes out via art, right? Whatever those projects might be. And so, very exciting. Linda will be on board for that, and she's excited.
I'm excited to see it grow.
That's amazing. Is there anything else? Like, is there something you feel, so you can give yourself pause, that, because some of these questions were answered, like, multiple questions answered in one topic, right? And so that's perfect, and I'm taking notes for feedback. But is there something you kind of feel in you that you're like, I really want to get this out, or I want to say that either, just something. Is there something you feel we missed that you just want to be able to express as far as what could help make what we do better for the women and the children, going forward, really? Is there anything just sitting there that you're like, yes, I want to say this, or maybe not, so I just want to ask.
I would have to think about that for a second.
Yeah, I know. I was like, that might be a pause.
I just know that it was such a terrible cycle for me in active addiction, because my kids were gone, and it was because of the drugs. And every time I seen my kids, like, I would be sober the day before, and then I would go visit my kids, and then as soon as I seen my kids and visited them, I just felt so terrible, and I would use again. So that was that cycle, and I would just cry, like ugly cry. And then after I got sober, and honestly, I didn't know that Mahala's Hope was not like a rehab. I didn't find that out until after. So I didn't really go to rehab, I guess. I went to Mahala's Hope, like a transition. Mm-hmm. But it was such a beautiful place, and, I had that space. And every time they came there, I would just cry because, a part of me was leaving, and that was such a huge part of me, and my identity was they were taking it away from me. And I only got to see them once every 2 weeks, I think it was. I was seeing them once every week, and then they went to every other week. And I truly believe that you will see growth in women and children if they are able to grow together.
That's it right there. Wow. That's it right there. You just said that totally perfectly. You gave the description of, and this is maybe the first time I took this in with this clarity, okay, what you just said. What I was hearing when you were describing, because, your kiddos had to come, and then they had to wait till the next visitation time, right? Which, whatever, a week or two later, it was almost reinforcing trauma in a way.
Yes.
Not intended clearly, because it's trying to get kids in, right? Like these facilities, whether it's Mahala's or other sober livings, they're trying to do what they can do, right? At the same time, I never took that and looked at that piece of it, that for you, struggling with guilt, leaving your kids, all these pieces of the things you felt from your experience, it was like that having to happen all over again every single time. And so, yes, in a treatment facility, you have the clinical staff to help you work through that, right? Because now we can go into trauma and mental health and all the things that run, where does that all come from, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, I don't know that everyone watching this video understands how profound trauma affects us, right? How reoccurring that can be, how much that can show up repeatedly, and how it's a process to work through, right? So that is another reason why in sober living, which is sort of this last stage of housing support before someone's on their own, right?
Yes.
Totally, right?
Yes.
So just so people are aware of that to have those pieces in place there as well, but yet not call it treatment, but have it available versus mandatory, is very different. And it can help that exact process that you just said, because it's not like we're clockwork. It's not like we go from primary treatment, for some that do, into a transitional, and then, you're out your 90 days. That means my trauma's gone. Yeah. Do you know, I mean, I know there's a little, right?
It's a lifelong.
It's ongoing, right.
It's lifelong.
And so to bridge that into sober living is huge. Wow, you worded that so well. You put that together so well, because it is ongoing. And of course that need is there in whatever supportive housing environment, right? Whatever level of care, if we want to get technical, right?
Yes.
It's needed and it needs to be there. And I think you're right. I think the growth, you will continue to see it, versus having the environment more be, limited in its support. It doesn't mean that there's not in the typical sober livings, right? Sober living homes. It's just that it could be more, right?
Yes.
It could be, why not take the feedback like you're giving and go, how can we make this more? And then do whatever needs to be done to do that, right?
Yes.
Dana, I just appreciate your time so much and your vulnerability. I mean, it really is this multi-layered piece. You're sharing parts of your story. You're taking yourself back in time, right? And that takes some courage and strength to do that. And go on video. Let's be real to everybody, right? Like, no, we don't necessarily love that. But it's
kind of hot
so,
over here.
Yeah, right? But it's so important for, I think I said this, and I'm going to just recap on this and kind of finish with this, for educational purposes, right? Also, for anybody else operating a sober living, right? We can make it better.
Yes.
We can. It might seem impossible, right? When you think of things financially and you go into all the logistics of it, but I truly believe there's always a way. You just have to be determined to find it, and people start coming forward to help you do this. We are seeing that here at ARYA, and so getting your feedback and continuing to do that. I mean, we have a couple other women lined up that are going to do the same thing as you, and I want to continue doing that, right? I mean, as time is going on, even with the current women in the home, right? The current women at ARYA when they're staying there, like, these are those interview processes, like what's working, what's not, where do we need to change things, right?
Giving a voice to the statistic.
Yeah. Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to leave that there. I like how you just ended that. Giving the voice to the statistic. Oh, that's perfect. Thank you, Dana, so much.
Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm.